Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Montana Book Festival. My name is Jeff Badnock, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Tiffany Midge is a citizen of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and was raised in the Pacific Northwest. She is a former humor columnist for Indian Country Today and teaches multi-genre humor writing that elevates awareness of social justice issues. Her McSweeney's article, An Open Letter to White Women Concerning the Handmaid's Tale and America's Historical Amnesia, garnered a 2018 Pushcart Prize. Midge's poetry collection, The Woman Who Married a Bear, won the Kenyon Review Earthworks Indigenous Poetry Prize and a Western Heritage Award. Her memoir, Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese, due October 1st, is a powerful and humorous prose collection about family, politics, and identity as a Native woman in America. Sarah Vowell praised Midge as a wry, astute charmer with an eye for detail and an ear for the scruffy rhythms of American lingo. Midge is the 2019 Simons Public Humanities Fellow for the University of Kansas Hall Center for the Humanities and aspires to be the Distinguished Writer in Residence in the Seattle Space Needle. Please welcome Tiffany Midge. Good morning.
It was either the Space Needle or the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
I was hoping either one of those would make me very happy. It's very necessary. Well, thank you all very much for coming out today. Thank you to the Montana Book Festival organizers. They've done a lot, and I just want to commend them for all their organizational abilities. It's always such a pleasure to come here to Missoula. I live over the hill in Moscow, Idaho. Let's see here. Oh, and I just wanted to say, if I have to cough or blow my nose, I just wanted to give you fair warning. I'm not really working on all cylinders right now, but thanks for your patience. I wanted to start off with the title piece, Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's. And a lot of people have asked me, why are you using that title from the famous Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, and I see heads bobbing up and down. And that was like a seminal text by the author V. Brown. And the one thing about that book is that it portrayed, Native Americans as extinct, in a sense. That entire book was about our extinction. And a lot of people, I've heard rumors that we're not extinct. There are actually, Native American people still, living, right? And so, I wanted to poke fun at that notion a little bit, and that's why I put in the Chuck E. Cheese's, because that's probably about the cheesiest thing that one could think of, right? Insofar as humor, which I'm an unabashed, cheesy humorist. I have no qualms whatsoever at being completely groan-worthy, whatever calls for that. So there's a really long story behind the V. Brown. And then a lot of people attribute Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee to, like an Indian chief, like a famous Indian chief, like Chief Joseph, who, said, I will fight no more forever, which I believe, he did say at one point. But there actually was no Native American person that ever said Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. It was an early 20th century poet that wrote a poem, and that was what that was based off of. Buffy St. Marie wrote a song, and it was a great song, and she used that as her title. So it's been attributed, if it was attributed to an actual Native American person, I don't think that I would say Chuck E. Cheese. I don't think I would appropriate it that way. And it's a little bit hot water, too, to attribute or to call attention to a really famous massacre one of the worst, most tragic massacres. And so, a little bit of hot water there. I was skating an edge there a little bit. But insofar as just the idea of rewriting that script a little bit, right? Because we're not an extinct people. And, we're not tragic, and necessarily all of us are not tragic people. And, I just wanted to flip that script a little bit and rewrite that, because I think it's important to do that, change that narrative a little bit. So bury my heart at Chuck E. Cheese's. The day of my mother's funeral service, I separated myself from the rest of the grieving throng and hid out in the musician's belfry like tortured Quasimodo, my grief too hideous to expose. I peered down upon the mourners below, watched my aunt struggling with folding a star quilt, trying to contain it within the casket. The lid wouldn't close. The white pastor believed my mother's quilt was some sort of ancient Lakota ritual. He announced it with gravity and a sense of suspicious distance. Native flute music floated out from the speakers as my auntie struggled to close the lid, both furtively cramming the ends of the quilt into the casket, tucking my mother inside. One of them gestured exasperatingly to the other, and then they both started to laugh. Months before her death, my mother made me promise that we'd bury her in her royal blue pantsuit, her favorite color. She forced her jewelry on me. Take this and this. Here, take this. It is both touching and morbid to accept a dying woman's most personal belongings, her favorite silver and turquoise rings, her onyx bracelet, her Black Hills gold rings. She even gave me her little silver buffalo pendant, and I wore it to a grade school presentation, and one of the children raised her hand and asked, "Is that a pig?" Okay, now, the crucial difference between having children versus having pets is that when your sister's cat gets run over by a car, you can say things like, "She never was very bright." Wakes lasted for days, my mother says. We'd get bored waiting around while the old people sat huddled over like crows. Sometimes we'd tell the younger kids that the host needed to use the outhouse for extra storage. It was time for to use the outhouse for extra storage until it was time for the deceased to be buried. We'd tell the kids that it was a multiple fatality car accident, lots of parts that needed storing. Those kids refused to use the outhouse after that. On the day my mother received her test results, we stopped off at a restaurant for lunch. The waitress complimented my mother on her earrings. My mother laughed. "You want them? I won't be needing them." Grandma Iron Thunder's service was held on a scorching day in the middle of August on the Dakota Plains. There was gold-colored grass and blinding sky for miles in every direction. Her casket was draped with a red quilt featuring the famous silhouette of the end of the trail, stitched in black cloth. My mother clucked. I hate that quilt. Good thing they're burying it. Following the fire and brimstone of my mother's memorial service, I wended my way down the spiral staircase from the musician's belfry, and a church lady I'd never met before congratulated me on my beautiful singing. "You have such a beautiful voice," she cooed. I thanked her, taking all the credit, even though I hadn't been singing at all. On November 22nd, 1963, at the doctor's office, my mother and her husband received news that he had 6 months to live. Immediately following the short walk to their car, Frank switched on the radio, and they listened briefly to the story about the assassination of President Kennedy. Then they switched off the radio and started driving back home to spend time with their new baby daughter. My Grandma Wing's funeral was held in an old church and cemetery at Fort Peck. She requested everyone wear white. She was 98, The service was dignified and affecting, replete with a mix of traditional and Christian songs. As the service was finishing up and people were paying their respects, a melee erupted outside. A dozen or more cousins jumped Rachel's baby daddy and beat him to a pulp. All those white shirts and all those white pants stained with blood and dirt. Someone said, "Clyde's last stand." The men all laughed. He was just a real piece of shit. During a trip to Mexico, my sister tattooed my mother's name, Alida Rose, surrounded by roses, onto her ankle. A few years later, following the death of my father, I considered getting a tattoo in tribute to him also, but Herman Lloyd just didn't have the same cachet. When my mother's respirator was finally removed and we watched the monitors slowly wind down, and when I finally left the hospital, a 3-year-old girl refused to let me pass her until I acknowledged her ecstatic announcement. We just had a baby. She was just beaming. Well, of course she was. The Lakota unburdened themselves of hair, of fingers, cut into their flesh to temporarily escape the grief of a loved one's death. I saw this on a man called Horse and Dances with Wolves. But as far as I knew, no one in my immediate family had ever done this. My mother was worth far more than a hank of hair. She was worth my spine, my eyes, my womb. There are many versions of the scenes that take place inside my head. A dying mother instructs her daughter with her last wishes, but the one I remember the most is poached from a meme making the rounds online. "I want my remains to be spread at Disneyland," my mother says. "But I don't want to be cremated. Just leave my parts." "Okay, I promise. You can bury my heart at Chuck E. Cheese's." "Okay, you got it. Bury my heart at SeaWorld." "I will, Mama. I will fight no more about putting the toothpaste cap on forever." We were 2 Indian women, laughing until our bellies ached, spitting death right in the eye. Thank you. The next piece I want to read is the piece that I received the Pushcart Award for this year. Excuse me. When pushcart comes to shove. Finally after all these years, right? So this is a McSweeney's piece, and it had a lot of mixed responses, which I really enjoyed, actually. I really enjoyed the negative responses. I don't know why, I just have like a sort of morbid fascination with that sort of criticism. Because you're right, in your heart, you're like 100% right, and those people are just 100% wrong. And it's just sort of fascinating to see people fall on their faces like that. So, and I am punching up here, so I hope it doesn't make anyone too squeamish. It's an open letter to white women concerning The Handmaid's Tale and America's historical amnesia. Okay. Dear Barron, Dakota, Jezebel, Bronte, Caprice, Cher, et al. I don't mean to single anyone out here, but as an Indigenous woman, it behooves me to point out that while I perfectly understand your fondness for The Handmaid's Tale as a white feminist anthem, I can't but help feel all kinds of somehow about it. Each week when you were all discussing and posting recaps of the latest episodes on Facebook, etc., I am resisting the urge to cram my face into the couch cushions to keep from screaming. I don't mean to point blame at anyone per se, but I'm talking to you, Katniss, Guinevere, Fig. You see, Veronica, While The Handmaid's Tale presents a dystopian world ruled by a white totalitarian and fascist regime, and while it appears to bear at least some similarity to our current conservative administration, Reese, and as entertaining as The Handmaid's Tale is for consumers of premium television and popular culture, Madison, might I offer a reminder that the Republic of Gilead is in fact fictional. And at least for the time being, Flower, white women are not being forcibly recruited into brothels or radioactive work farms or used as baby-making vessels for the Republic. But, if I may be so bold, do you know what actually is not fictional, Kelsey? The Indian Maiden's Tale. Yes, Indigenous women are well acquainted with that American dystopian nightmare, and at the risk of sounding like old broomstick up her ass Aunt Lydia, an episode from the Indian Maiden's Tale is when Indigenous children were torn from their mothers and confined to residential boarding schools, forced to contend with all manner of horrors and abuses, a hellscape of horrors and abuses, not so very different from those portrayed in your favorite TV programming. So I hope the next time you tune into Hulu, Waverly, you'll pause and think about Indigenous women and children who endured unconscionable suffering. And during the commercial breaks, Fiona, may I also remind you that Indigenous women suffer violence and rape at astonishing rates. The Department of Justice in 2016 reported that 56% of the 2,000 women surveyed had experienced sexual violence. And if that doesn't have you reaching for the smelling salts, Eloise, sterilization of Indigenous women was a rampant practice. The U.S. General Accounting Office reported that the Indian Health Service sterilized 3,406 Indigenous women between 1973 and 1976. And according to a report compiled by the Lakota People's Law Project, LARC, Indigenous women are incarcerated at 6 times the rate of white women. I hope you'll think of that the next time Offred debases herself by saying, "Blessed be the fruit," or Mrs. Waterford sits pensively in her blue frock in her blue room, thinking about how miserable her life is and how she wants to disappear right into the fucking wallpaper forever. As entertaining as The Handmaid's Tale is for fans of Orwellian nihilistic programming, Betsy, it does not represent all of society, but it does effectively represent the cultural and historical amnesia of America. Saffron. And maybe you will switch to the History Channel and watch an episode of The Indian Maiden's Tale instead. Hi, and sincerely, Tiffany Midge. If anybody wants to criticize that, they can talk to me afterwards. I have a morbid fascination with criticism. I may have to cough, excuse me. So this next piece that I want to share talks about when I once was working as an investigative journalist, and I interviewed Rachel Dolezal back when she used to be Indigenous. She was Native American. She wouldn't say what tribe she was. It was sort of, pan-Indian, but a lot of people don't know that, and today I'm going to break my silence. It's a piece called Red Like Me. I knew Rachel Dolezal back when she was Indigenous. In 2015, the media exploded with coverage about a woman who claimed she was African American. Her name is Rachel Dolezal, and her name has since become synonymous with racial scandal and identity confusion. While the world watched as Rachel Dolezal's tall tales unfolded, and while her web of lies and deception grew more and more tangled with each passing news day, I inwardly sighed and tried to impress upon my social circle, those in real life and those on social media, this is nothing new for us natives. And to borrow an apropos lyric from Shania Twain, a white pop star from the 90s whose own identity was not without its share of complications, her stepfather's Ojibwe, that don't impress me much, right? Well, wouldn't you know it? Like the ever-ready Energizer Bunny, Dolezal is back in the news again, giving interviews and promoting her new book. So I thought that this would be an opportunity to share my fascinating story about the time I personally met Rachel Dolezal back when she used to be Indigenous. Yes, that's right. Rachel Dolezal used to be Native American. An obscure fact that only I and a handful of people are privy to. And today I'm breaking my silence. It happened over a decade ago when I was writing an investigative think piece in response to pretendianism. Critical questions I wished to explore were, who were these pretendian persons? Where did they come from? Why are they here? Why did that one steal my job? What's with all the turquoise accessorizing and black shoe polish? I needed some answers. Interestingly enough, since pretendianism makes up somewhere in the ballpark of 54% of the population in the United States, now I'm no statistician, but that is a huge percentage. And I didn't have to journey very far for answers because it turned out it wasn't the epic quest that I'd imagined. I didn't have to team up with Galdolf and my hobbit friends and traverse through the mountains, snow, darkness, forests, rivers, and plains, facing evil and danger at every corner to destroy the One Ring in the hopes of entering the Dark Lord's reign. But, boy, howdy was it close. I called up a friend of this one guy who had a cousin who knew a pretendian. And the pretendian graciously agreed to meet me at a nearby tea shop for an interview. Speaking of a friend, I assume pretendianism fits into the rubric of 6 degrees of separation, except they actually don't. It's more like 2 degrees of separation. And again, I'm no statistician. I just like to say that word, statistician. Upon entering the tea shop, aptly called the Animal Spirit Tea Shop, I noticed the ambient tones of the so-called Native American flute wafting from the speakers, the sweet aroma of sage and patchouli, patrons lounging on large cushions, some quietly talking, some blissfully nodding off. I had the odd sensation of being inside an opium den circa 1920 San Francisco. Had I just blood quantum leaped? The pretendian subject's name was Faith Eagle Nebula. And yes, that's right, she's known today as Rachel Dolezal. Ms. Dolezal, or rather Ms. Eagle Nebula, indicated in her email that she had long black hair, a weave as it turns out, and that she would be wearing a peasant skirt and Birkenstocks, a description that fit 99% of the patrons in the tea shop, which forced me to break out my specialized Indian radar to locate her. Now, when that didn't work, fortunately, the grandfather stepped in and brought Faith Eagle Nebula to me. Faith tapped me on the shoulder, introduced herself. Pure magic. Faith Eagle Nebula was adorned in her pretendian regalia, just as she described, her peasant skirt pooling onto the floor and dragging behind her like a bridal train. "I'm Faith," she said, her eyes sparkling, her cheeks rosy as a postcard sunset. She smelled strongly of spices and wind chimes tinkling in the breeze. Very strange. She led me to a cozy nest of pillows, and we lay down to begin the interview. From my lounging position, I scanned the ceiling, taking note that it was plastered with figures from the zodiac. Faith offered to massage my back, but I managed politely to decline. My first question to Rachel Dolezal, a.k.a. Ms. Eagle Nebula, was how she got her name. Now, I'm sure it was impolite of me to ask, but any investigative journalist worth her salt has to ask the hardline questions. She responded by gesturing dramatically and then said that her name came to her in a dream. Elaborating further, she said that, like many other pretendians, she's carried other names throughout her life, too. Her first pretendian name was Roadkill Squirrel, a name that she said she couldn't talk about because it was too upsetting. Other pretendian names she'd carried in previous lifetimes included Dancing Through Meadows Woman, Frolics on Freeways, Laughs with Salad, and Stands with Handcuffs. The last one, she explained, was given to her during her political activism years. She asked me my own pretendian name, and I humored her, and I said it was Dances Through Drive-Thrus. She nodded and mumbled, "Oh." I asked Rachel Dolezal, a.k.a. Ms. Eagle Nebula, about her ethnicity, her specific tribal affiliation, and who her relatives are. Ms. Eagle Nebula responded quickly by excusing herself to get another pot of yerba mate. It was almost as if she was avoiding my question. She was gone for what seemed an eternity, and when she came back to our soft nest of colorful cushions, she was without the pot of yerba mate, but said she'd like to smudge me. I reluctantly agreed, and while she checked her iPhone for sacred winds and good medicines, I crossed my fingers behind my back to ward off whatever strange spells she might be putting on me. I mean, you can never be too careful. When I resumed my interview, asking again about her ethnicity, tribe, and relatives, she said that whenever she filled out the ethnicity sections of job grant or health applications, she always checked the "It's Complicated" box. I told her that that wasn't a box, but that was a relationship status on Facebook. And she replied that she was aware of that, but she always added it as a safeguard. She also said that she writes in high cheekbones when applications ask for proof of tribal citizenship, implying that she's from the high cheekbone band of the Pretendian tribe. Then Faith made the sign of the cross and said that her spirit animal was the wolf, at which point I threw up in my mouth a little bit. I asked Rachel Dolezal, a.k.a. Ms. Eagle Nebula, whether she was aware that pretendians present a real and present danger to the integrity of Native communities because they usurp authentic Native voices and dilute, cheapen, and perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Ms. Eagle Nebula appeared unfazed by this information and pivoted my questions by announcing that she had received a vision while browsing the Aztec-inspired crop tops at Old Navy. Those crop tops were amazing. I bought a dozen of them, she said, and then she went on to recount her lunch the day before at Panda Express. You know, I used the whole part of the Kung Pao chicken entree, even the leftover chopsticks. Faith removed the chopsticks from the top knot bun in her hair and placed them in my hand. "These are sacred talking sticks," she said. As if right on cue, the fire alarm sounded. And the sprinklers went off. God, I hope that doesn't happen, but you never know. And the tea baristas began ushering people out of the shop, and I gathered up my belongings and rushed out and followed the stampede of dreamcatcher earrings, turquoise squash blossom necklaces, and Birkenstocks to safety. Far away in the distance, I heard fire trucks and emergency vehicles speeding to the scene. What kind of uncanny magic was this? Around the corner from the tea shop, I waved goodbye to Rachel Dolezal, a.k.a. Eagle Faith Nebula, and offered a shrug, which is the international gesture for "what are you going to do?" She bowed in return, just before being whisked onto the back of a pink unicorn and ferried away into a puff of rainbow cotton candy clouds. On the way back to my office, I ran through a set of lawn sprinklers, hoping that I could shower off the encounter and extinguish the reek of patchouli from my clothes. While I did not complete the interview, I would like to interview Rachel Dolezal at a later date, and once and for all, get to the bottom of the perplexing phenomena of pretendian culture, a mystery akin to the Egyptian tombs, the Bermuda Triangle, and the lost city of Atlantis. Aho! It's 11:30. Those were the three that I picked. I guess I'll read Conversations with My Lakota Mom, because that's really quick. And then and then we can just sign off from there, and you can go on to your next events. In observance of Mother's Day, I'd like to share a personal anecdote about my mom. Spring had arrived, the sun was heating things up, and it was time to plant the garden. My mother wanted to put in yellow beans, a type of bean she'd never gardened before. She carefully read the planting instructions, her eyeglasses balanced on the end of her nose. Only plant in full direct sunlight was what the instructions said. She looked up from the seed packet, surveyed the sky, the incoming clouds. It was nearing sunset, and soon it would be dusk. So my mother put away the packet of seeds to plant for the next day. Now, this story illustrates my mother's, shall we say, decidedly unique personality in a way that no other story can quite compare. But I'll try to top it off with the following collection of interactions between a 40-something daughter and her 70-ish Lakota mom, called Conversations with My Lakota Mom, which represents a kind of amalgamation of some Native moms, and probably all moms everywhere, that I've been lucky enough to have in my life. For my 70th birthday, my mom says, I want to hire them sexy Chippewa dancers to come entertain at my party. Don't you mean the Chip and Dale dancers? No, not the chipmunks. It's a really bad image in my head. Oh. Okay. Conversations with My Lakota Mom number 2. Where are we going? She'll say. I'm taking you to lunch. Buckle your seatbelt. Where? Old Country Buffet. What's wrong? You're taking me to Costco for the free samples again. No, I'm not. Yeah, you are. That's where you took me last time, and you tried to tell me that the hot dog condiments was a salad bar. Fine, you're on to me. But you like the samples. They're free, and they have crescent rolls. You should buy toilet paper while we're there. Okay. And pretzels. Really? And a honey-baked ham. Okay, see, taking me to Old Country Buffet would be cheaper. Conversations with My Lakota Mom number 3. Okay, starts off with Mom saying, can you drive me to the tribal clinic next week? I have a woman appointment. Yeah, I can. I have a lady time appointment. Yeah, okay. That's my vagina doctor. Right, got that. I have to show that doctor my business down there. TMI, Mom. What? Okay, what? They stopped asking me certain questions. Like what? Like, when was the last time Scarlett came home to Tara? Mom! And they always ask me if I feel safe at home. Oh? Yeah. They want to know if you're beating me. They say, Lorraine, is your daughter beating you? Tell them I'm thinking about it. Elder abuse. Conversations with My Lakota Mom number 4, getting ready for a memorial service. My mom says, when I make the journey, play Neil Diamond at my funeral. Play Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. Your dad and me conceived you with that song. Okay, Mom. It's a good song. If you played that more often, I might have more grandchildren. I'll get right on that. Are themed funerals a thing? I'd like pony rides, corn dogs, but don't bury me. Just let people throw balls at a dunk tank target to sink my body into the abyss. Conversations with My Lakota Mom number 5. I like that one guy. What's his name? That Indian actor? Wes Studi? No, the other one. Gary Farmer? Oh, no. What's his name? Adam Beach? No, he was in Dances with Wolves. He married that white woman with the big hair, the one who looked like she just came from Vidal Sassoon. What? No. He's so handsome. Your dad was handsome like that Indian Dances with Wolves. That's Kevin Costner, Mom, and he's not Indian. Well, he played one on TV. You didn't just say that. Grinning, I did. I like seeing you get all riled up. Conversations with my Lakota mom. This is the last one. Mom says, I walked 3 miles on the treadmill yesterday. Wow, Mom, good for you. Yeah, I was watching this TV show. It gave me pep. Yeah? What were you watching, NASCAR? No. What's NASCAR? Never mind. What were you watching? It was this show about Indians running all these buffalo off a cliff. Oh, I saw that before. That's Into the West. Yeah, Into the West. I figured I'd better get the lead out. All our ancestors running alongside buffalo on horseback beneath a hot plains sun. Yeah, they humbled me. So I walked extra to honor them. I hope the grandfathers are smiling. That's good. Next time you can work out on the rowing machine and pretend you're Sacagawea mapping a trail to the Pacific. Yeah, I'll be Sacagawea, getting my groove back. They can put me working out on the rowing machine on the $20 bill. Alrighty. I think that'll about cover it. I think we're like at 11:45 right now, or 11:40. So unless anybody has any specific requests, that'll be it. And thanks so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the festival. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, enjoy. Take care.